Whether it's the case of the missing child or a missing arm, you wouldn't believe that animals have solved some serious mysteries, and not just the kind you'd think. Welcome back to Top 5 Central. Glad you guys could make it over here because we need your help to solve all 8 cases. Subscribe for a free trench coat and magnifying glass, and let's get into number 8. I think we can all mutually agree that dogs are man's best friend, but honestly, they can be anyone's hero on a rough day. So when the 1966 World Cup was in jeopardy by a thief stealing the event's trophy, who else but Pickles the dog would come along and save the day? Back in '66, it was a very exciting time to be an English football fan. Your team was competing for the World Cup against West Germany in Wembley Stadium, of all places. But then, all of a sudden, your world comes crashing down when the prestigious title is stolen. And not even by the opposing team, rather, it was taken by some of their own countrymen, a fellow Englishman nicknamed Mr. Crafty and his brother Reg, thus ensuing the famous missing World Cup. People searched far and wide, checking everywhere the golden trophy could have been. However, just a week after its disappearance, the gentleman named David Corbett was walking his dog Pickles when the dog seemed to catch a strange scent. Curious about the smell, Pickles went over to a nearby car only for his owner to stumble along the missing World Cup lying on the ground wrapped in newspaper. And it's a good thing that Pickles didn't bite into that newsprint. Amazingly, the cup wasn't damaged at all, and to the elation of English fans, was won later that year by England, with their famous defender Bobby Moore raising the trophy high. But I gotta give credit where it's due, as there was no way anyone could have done this without the help of England's new national hero, Pickles. In fact, the dog might have actually outshined the defender in terms of fame, becoming an overnight celebrity, and even getting his own movie, The Spy with a Cold Nose. Sadly, the fame didn't last long for the canine as he passed away from old age the following year. He may be gone, but this good boy's amazing story will never be forgotten. Number 7. This next animal might not be as cuddly or have a cute name like Pickles, but he definitely deserves some credit for his shocking contribution. Back in 1935, things weren't going too swell for Coogee Aquarium owner Bert Hobson. The local pier, theater, ballroom, restaurant, and arcades were all demolished on the Coogee Pier, and those businesses were essential for getting foot traffic to the aquarium. With all of the businesses being shut down, it seemed like the aquarium would shortly follow, so in a last-ditch effort, Hobson banked on an investment in a tiger shark, hoping it would attract patrons and bring in some cash to sustain business. Now, the very last thing he could have ever expected, though, was that the shark would actually go on to play a key part in solving a murder case. While the shark was being watched by plenty of patrons, it suddenly began violently convulsing before regurgitating a human arm. Now, I doubt having something horrific like that happen was very good for a struggling business, but Bert dialed up the local police, who immediately fished the arm out of the tank. The police noted that there was a rope tied to the arm, and shortly after discovered that the limb hadn't been bitten off, but rather it was cut off. To everyone's surprise, they were able to trace the tattoos on the arm back to a guy named Jimmy Smith. Jimmy had previously been coordinating drug deals around the area for quite some time and had an accomplice named Holmes. No, he's not related to Sherlock. He plays for the other team. But after multiple disagreements and a falling out over a bad deal, Jimmy wanted to blackmail his former accomplice, which ended up putting his life in danger. Holmes decided to send out a mutual associate to assassinate his ex-running buddy, dismembering the body and dropping it off into the ocean below, but bringing that arm along with him so Holmes could be sure the deed was done. The appendage was later disposed of by Holmes and of course was later linked to his involvement in this crime. I guess you could say that the shark really gave the police a hand. No? Okay. Number 6. Resurfacing from both the ocean and my bad humor, and we've got another four-legged detective who's served as the only witness in the murder of their owner. The dog's owner was found hanging from the ceiling of her Paris flat, leaving her dog Scooby to reveal the truth of the case to the world. In fact, this canine was the first ever animal to appear as a witness in a murder case, and who better to solve an actual mystery than a dog named Scooby? Yeah, they had the dog sit at the witness stand as the judge instructed suspects from the case to stand in front of the dog, and when that particular person came near, Scooby snapped and barked furiously at them. Considering it had been 2.5 years, aka 17 dog years, since the homicide first took place, having the dog remember anything from that far back is truly unbelievable. You can be as skeptical as you want, but a dog is pretty easy to read and can't really lie about its feelings toward a person. Whether that should be the deciding factor with this guy's life is another thing, but if this dog is the only witness, what choice did they really have here? As of now, the case is still pending, but even still, I'd like to think that this pup contributed something meaningful to avenge his beloved owner. And while this dog might not be the cartoon icon we all know and love, he sure can help solve a mystery just like his namesake. Number 5. Parrots are probably some of the most intelligent pets you can ever have, considering you can even hold a conversation with most of them. They have the ability to remember conversations and even imitate them from time to time. So when this African gray parrot began to repeat arguments that his owners were having, it didn't come as much of a surprise. But when one of those owners was shot and murdered, that raised a few more questions about what exactly the bird was saying. The parrot was already known for having a bit of a potty mouth, but one thing they never heard the parrot say was, this was recorded only weeks after Martin Durham was murdered, and after hearing this, one can assume that the bird was there to witness it all, imitating what sounds to be a male and female voice in different parts of the clip.
Shut up! And it ends with these chilling words. Get your building now! Shut up!
After hearing this, it pinned Mr. Durham's wife, Glenna, as a potential suspect in the case. While I don't necessarily think this qualifies as evidence in a case, it did help to round down who Martin's potential murderer could have been. I mean, they even got to the point where they considered using the bird for a part of the investigation, but opted against it, likely because it had never been done before. But following the main investigation, it was proven that Miss Durham had shot her husband 5 times before attempting to end her own life as well in a failed suicide attempt. She was later sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder. It's crazy to think a parrot could remember details from an entire conversation like this, especially when I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night. But number 4. From one intelligent bird to another, one of the most loyal pets a person can have, surprisingly, is a cockatoo. Truth be told, I can't think of many pets that would willingly sacrifice their own life in an attempt to protect their owners. But this feathered friend did exactly that. Larry Bird, yes, he was named after the infamous NBA player from the Celtics, which was his owner Kevin's best friend. They cultivated a strong bond in the time they spent together, so much so that when Kevin needed him most, Larry Bird was right there. When Kevin was attacked in his home by a fed-up employee, Daniel Torres, Larry swooped right into action to help his owner out. He bit into the man's head, drawing blood as an attempt to save his owner that was stabbed by Torres. Unfortunately, the attacker turned his attention to the bird, stabbing it as well before wiping the blood from his head. Between the things Torres touched and the blood on the cockatoo's beak, there was plenty of evidence available to sentence Daniel to life in prison. Ultimately, this whole thing hinged on the bird's bravery and loyalty to its owner, and while both sadly passed away in the incident, Larry fought with everything he had and did a phenomenal job in giving the police enough evidence to actually put a murderer away. Number 3. Now, I know the last entry was heart-wrenching, but quick warning, this one's definitely one of the saddest on the list. But it's important we celebrate this dog who made an important contribution towards solving a murder case, because it marked the first time in history that DNA from a dog was used in a criminal trial. It was presumed that the dog in question, Chief, was shot while protecting its owners from 2 armed assailants. The 2 went on to demand drugs from the couple before murdering them both in cold blood. Chief fought to stay alive, but sadly, after 30 hours, he passed away despite receiving medical care. And while neither of the couple's blood was on their murderer's clothes, the dog's was. This allowed forensic scientists to use that DNA to place both assailants at the scene of the crime. Then, following some witness reports who had also claimed them to be at the apartment around the time the murders took place, the 2 were charged with murder. Now, it's incredibly upsetting that the dog passed away along with its owners, but Chief remained loyal to them both, even to the end. And that is definitely a good boy in my book. Number 2. Back in September of the year 2002, 3 friends were building out a loft in their barn when a group of men pulled up. The group had planned to rob the place, but upon seeing the 3 men had to scramble and change plans. The group's leader, Philip Stroud, decided to subdue them before killing each one, as any of them may have seen the license plate, which could be used to track them down later. They then went on to rob the place following the murders, leaving the bodies in the barn. After getting what they came for, the group exited the scene, but not before driver Phil stepped in some dog feces on the way out. Through this key piece of evidence, police were able to connect him to the incident and place him at the scene of the crime even. Talk about having crappy luck. Shortly after, he was convicted with 3 counts of murder and 2 counts of robbery. If it weren't for that dog doing its business, he could have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids and that dog. Thankfully though, he didn't, thanks to this major misstep. Regardless, if there's one thing I hope you take away from this entry, it's to watch where you step and watch the #1 spot. I like to imagine that when it comes to criminal cases that involve children, we all push just a little harder to ensure justice is served. So when Detective Mo Pargo was brought on to help search for 7-year-old Daniel Van Dam, she was determined to see this case through to the very end. Danielle had gone missing from her bed sometime on Friday night, and in the 2 days that passed, not a trace of her was found. However, after investigating around the neighborhood for a while, Mo came across a suspicious man who at the time had been rolling up a water hose rather quickly, which as a cop, Mo knew this to be suspicious behavior. With that knowledge, she began working to obtain a search warrant for his home, and once she was inside the man's residence, he began to sweat bullets as the police began to search his house. They were in there for quite some time before coming across some dog hair. This definitely seemed a little out of place considering the man in question, David Westerfield, did not own a dog. The hair was later revealed to be that of the Van Dam's family dog and became a key piece in the evidence puzzle for the case. After connecting his lack of credible alibi to his failed lie detector test, it was clear that Westerfield was indeed guilty of abducting and murdering 7-year-old Danielle Van Dam. However, had it not been for the dog hair that Mo and her fellow officers picked up inside the criminal's home, this may have been left unsolved. And if we've learned anything today, let's just not take our pets for granted because they're pretty incredible all around. Also, a tiger is not a pet. Or is it? Maybe you'll find out in our next animals video. But speaking of videos, there's a video on screen right now that you can check out. If you have not subscribed yet, what are you doing? But I'll see you guys over there. And this has been Sam from Top 5 Central. And thanks for your help solving the case. We couldn't have done it without you. Or those meddling kids and that dog too. Yeah.